Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to my channel or welcome back. My name is Sarita. We have the very exciting, much advertised Bath & Body Works year 2024 in review today. I also, when I was in Columbus and making my road trip travels to Ohio, stopped in a few places to look for semi-annual sale candles. I really wasn't finding much of anything, but I did find in my favorite place, Beckley, West Virginia, a trove of candles that were not 75% off, but they were, at the $10.95 price point, and they were candles I hadn't seen for a bit. So I went ahead and got some of those, and I'm gonna start the video out with those. I did buy a couple others that I'm going to feature in the main part of the video, which is my favorite candles of 2024. So I'm not going to mention those particular purchases because I'll mention them as I get to them in the video. So yes, today is best or year in review 2024 for Bath & Body Works. And usually this video would be a review of all the best new candle nominees of the year, and then leading up to the great revelation in which I choose what I think is the very top best new candle of 2024. I don't feel as though I can do that this year because I don't think that Bath & Body Works had a stellar year. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't a terrible year. And as I started putting together this video, I kind of got really excited because there's a lot of little candles in here that I had kind of forgotten about that I really enjoyed this year. I don't know that they were top, change my life worthy best new candles, but they were great, mid-range new candles. And by mid-range here, I don't mean top notes, base notes. I mean mid-range in terms of quality of candle, mid-range in terms of innovative or creative or well executed or et cetera, unexpected. They were kind of mid-range. All of the new candles this year that were kind of standouts were just kind of in that mid-range. They weren't brilliant, but they were probably above average, and they held their own really, really nicely, and just were great. So in that sense, there were actually a ton of mid-range new candles that were actually quite good, and at least performed decently, if not better than decently. So we're gonna talk about those today. What I'm gonna call these is not best new candles of 2024, but essentially my favorite candles of 2024, my favorite new candles of 2024. So these have to be new candles for this year, not just new to me, new candles from Bath & Body Works, new fragrances, etc. I have a couple honorable mentions in this category, 3 of them, and I'm just gonna get them out of the way really quickly. The first one is First Sight, actually, so I've got this one right here. We've talked about First Sight a lot. First Sight was the second half of the bridal duo that Bath & Body Works gave us, I don't know, early spring, late spring, something like that. And they kind of marketed it as the groom and the bride in a very heterosexual way. This was the groom's fragrance here, First Sight. It was a new fragrance. The bride's fragrance was dressed in white, which I thought was kind of a missed opportunity. It was a very boring, white floral Bath & Body Works shower gel kind of fragrance. It wasn't terrible, and it had a little bit of freshness and authenticity to it, but in my opinion, not enough. So I paid it no mind. I'm not gonna lie to you. However, I loved First Sight because First Sight ended up being a Baccarat Rouge dupe. I believe what they were trying to go for was a very stern masculine version of Baccarat Rouge, but in the development process didn't go quite stern or masculine enough, so that it really just ended up being a fairly good dupe of Baccarat Rouge, period. That made it not a great seller for them because I think it was a bit too feminine for most men. And then the women who love Baccarat Rouge and who would have loved this fragrance didn't even know about it because it wasn't being marketed to them. So you've probably noticed that First Sight is featured prominently in semi-annual sale. I don't think it's going to be coming back in this iteration. However, I did see that the new everyday luxuries, we're getting more of those high-end like perfume body sprays coming in, you know, here the first of the year. And one of them is a true Baccarat Rouge dupe. So I think that that true Baccarat Rouge dupe is going to take the place of First Sight. I put this in here. It wasn't a terrible performing candle, but it wasn't a great performing candle either. And from what I have seen from Baccarat Rouge dupes, and from various different other candle companies, especially Kringle. I know Kringle had one. It's real hard to get this fragrance to amplify in candle version. So I wasn't like really hating on Bath & Body Works because the performance wasn't great. If you burn it long, I think it must be a heavy soy formula. It does reach a certain sweet spot and start throwing. I would say in the back bedroom, it's a beautiful place for it. In the back bedroom, it probably came in at between a 5 and a 6. I would have liked it to be a bit more. Anything before like the 3-hour mark, though, you're really not going to get a whole lot from it. Anyway, I put this in here as an honorable mention because it is a stunning, gorgeous, and intoxicating fragrance if you are at all familiar with Baccarat Rouge. And even if you think you're not familiar with Baccarat Rouge, you've probably smelled it before on someone. So it's a gorgeous fragrance, but I don't feel right giving out a best new candle or even a my favorite new candle when it's just straight up a dupe. So I just want to mention that one as kind of an honorable mention. And then the other two honorable mentions were Gourmands, and I do think they deserve a place in this rotation. I don't know, again, if they're best new candles, full stop, but they deserve a mention. Main Street Bakery and Danbury Shortbread. Ken from Candle Channel put those on his best new candle list for this year from Bath & Body Works, and he definitely should have. His tastes lean a little bit more gourmand, a lot more gourmand than mine do. I tend to not burn gourmands, but from what I could tell, those candles were quite successful and yeah, deserve to be called favorite new candles for 2024. I don't know if they're best new candles. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know that they are. Main Street Bakery was essentially like a banana pudding, a la, you know, the traditional kind with the Nabisco, you know, vanilla wafers, etc. So that was that candle, even perfectly executed. Is it really a best new candle if you're giving us a banana pudding? I mean, let's be clear. Let's be objective. Like, how innovative, how groundbreaking is that concept, right? I don't know that it's a best new candle, but it was a very good mid-range candle, and it was welcome into the collection. I'm not a really big gourmand person, but I like to see a heavy amount of gourmands, good gourmands in the Bath & Body Works rotation. I think them and Homeworks are the two companies that do the gourmands the best. They are in the vanguard, I think, of gourmands. And I would really hate for Bath & Body Works to kind of lose that crown. I don't think they're in danger of it necessarily. But I did notice, especially this year, that there weren't as many, as Kent would say, juicy gourmands. And I think there should be. I really do. When there's not juicy gourmands on the floor, I do feel as though something is missing. And even though those candles are not for me personally, I think that it's a big mistake to not have them really represented pretty well at every season throughout the year. I don't know that Bath & Body Works did that well this year. There were a couple moments where the gourmands came out, but they were kind of punctuated moments. And I would like to see Bath & Body Works giving us juicy gourmands at every single month in the year. And I think there's no reason why they can't, why they shouldn't. Yes? So I'd like to see more of that this year, even though I'm personally probably not going to buy them. I do think that probably the two best gourmands this year were the most successful Main Street Bakery and Danbury Shortbread, which was in the Bridgerton collection and was, again, a kind of very basic almond forward shortbread. And it's not as if Bath & Body Works hasn't done shortbread cookies, or their sugar cookies and their shortbreads kind of meld together a little bit. It's a very basic concept and probably similar to a lot of different candles that they've done in the past, but this one was executed really, really well and was at least slightly different than some of the other offerings that they've given us throughout the years. So it was great for the collection. It was marketed great. It was a great concept. It was just good. It was really good. And from reports, I think performed quite decently, perhaps even more than quite decently. So I wanted to add those as honorable mentions. You're not going to see them mentioned at any other point in the video, but I am aware of those two, even though I didn't personally burn them, and I do think they deserve a mention. Those are two new fragrances for this year. Okay, let's talk about what I picked up in semi-annual. I had a couple repurchases because this was on the 75% off list or table, and I just can't pass it by. Palo Santo and Sage. I think I have 3 of these, but I just, at 75% off, you gotta do it. You gotta do it. This is one of my favorite candles from Bath & Body Works. Oh, it's so nice. I just reviewed Yankee Candles. What was it? No, scrapbooking. Afternoon scrapbooking. Fall afternoon scrapbook. Whatever it was. Woodland Weekend Memories was actually a Baccarat Rouge dupe, but it was a lot closer to what I think Bath & Body Works was trying to aim for, which is a very cologne version of Baccarat Rouge. And ended up performing not terrible, we'll put it this way. The afternoon scrapbooking, however, did perform terrible, but it was very similar to this Palo Santo and Sage. So much so that you could almost call it a dupe of Bath & Body Works Palo Santo and Sage. This one is just a little bit more bright, a little bit more authentic, I think. Maybe a little bit less amber in it. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, very similar candles. This one does perform better than Afternoon Scrapbooking. However, I would say not by a huge margin. Palo Santo and Sage is a bit of an underperformer in terms of strength and throw. It's probably okay given the sage note and the Palo Santo. It's a certain kind of fragrance note that can be overwhelming to a lot of people, I think, and it has been overwhelming to me sometimes, and I love this candle and adore it. So it may be okay that it kind of comes in at a 5 or a 6, but would I love for these candles to be performing better than 5 and 6? Yes, I would. Here was another repurchase, and this one was not 75% off. It was $10, $10.99, but I just like it, and I bought it. Salted Amber and Vetiver. This was this year's packaging. I think it came out in the first wave of the fall, which was probably in like May. May or June. And the first iteration of it was last year. I did make it a Best New Candle nominee in 2023 when this initially came out. And it came out in this beautiful marine, soft marine color. Really beautiful and perfect, I think, for the fragrance. Don't love this packaging quite as well, but it's totally fine. I do like the neutrals packaging kind of across the board, so fine. Salted Amber and Vetiver is just a gorgeous, with a capital G, gorgeous, really upscale perfume conceptual that goes a bit beachy, a bit aquatic, and it is stunning, stunning. When I initially reviewed this and made it a Best New Candle, I just said to myself, I said on camera, this is the kind of fragrance that could very easily be like a Jo Malone or something like that. I mean, it's a bougie perfume here. And Bath & Body Works' meat and potatoes tends to be body care or personal fragrance that's a little bit lower end, if you know what I mean. A little bit more budget friendly, a little bit more, I don't know, cheap smelling for lack of a better term. Man, this was a personal fragrance perfume conceptual that really, really was much more expensive smelling than what we usually get from Bath & Body Works. It was incredible. And at the time I said, I really want to see them keep aiming for the fences on these kinds of fragrances. Really fantastic. And actually it did better commercially than I think they expected it to, which is why it came back out this year, I think. A lot of people really, really liked it. So man, I hope they continue doing that. Guys, do you remember the, this Hispanic collection that they dropped in the fall period? Almost none of the fragrances were seasonal, so it didn't make any sense. And it just kind of got lost in the shuffle. Nobody really bought them. Well, you're probably seeing them a little bit at Semi-Annual if you've got a good store. So I went ahead and picked up the two that I was initially most interested in. I did not expect to be interested in Festival de las Flores, but when I smelled it, I thought, this is a very good spring floral. But I just was not going to buy a spring floral in September or October. I just was not. I was not, right? Well, I'm really glad to see it now because now my mind is going towards spring florals and I'm really happy to have this one. A beautiful, vibrant packaging. I thought it was really beautiful. I thought the packaging was great across the board and their thought and care to match the lids with the packaging, I just think kind of took it to a new level. So I was very, very happy with the packaging on these, despite the like heavy block quotes, etc. This one was the one that I was most familiar with, or that I was most excited about, this Rainforest Jungle, but then I found it really off-putting. Soft rainfall, lush trees, dewy eucalyptus. I mean, all of that sounds good, with the exception of the eucalyptus, so that's a little bit of a wild card fragrance. It's a really weird, it's a weird candle. It's a weird fragrance. There's almost something, I know this is gonna sound bizarre, almost something wine-like about it, like alcohol. And I can only assume that it's the eucalyptus up against a certain kind of floral, actually. Maybe with a wood note. And it's just, it's a bizarre candle. And I don't know that it's necessarily pleasant. It does smell kind of vaguely dewy, but I don't even know if it smells as green as I expected it to smell. So it's a wild card, but at $10.99, I was like, you know what? I'll try it. I'll try it going into the spring. You know what I mean? I did find a 75% off Cocoa Roasted Chestnuts from last year, 2023. This came out pretty late, I would say in like November, December, or something like that. And it was much maligned because it smells nothing like Cocoa Roasted Chestnuts. But it is fantastic. And it smells like a shea butter, cocoa butter, musk, just intoxicating, sensuous, like almost cashmere-like fragrance. It is fantastic. And if it had been marketed correctly, it would have easily been a best new candle and possibly would have been sold better. People would have actually bought it. Great. Oh, and look, it has blue wax too. I have backups of this, but I couldn't pass it up for, $6. Great, great candle that frankly I have always regretted not making a best new candle nominee. It kind of missed the podium because it just is not Cocoa Roasted Chestnuts at all. And I just didn't feel right being like, it's a best new candle, folks, even though it's completely mismarketed. So that's that. All right, so that was what I bought in semi-annual sale. I did buy a couple other things, but we're gonna talk about them now. So let's talk about my favorite new candles for 2024 from Bath & Body Works. Yes, and then at the end of, I think I'm just gonna go chronologically as much as possible. I tried to review my own playlists and be like, when did this candle come out? When did this candle come out? Blah, blah, blah. But I just kind of have like a vague sense of it. So excuse me if I'm like, give or take a couple months or something like that. I've got a general sense of when these candles came out, and I'm gonna try to keep them for the most part in that line, with the first new candles that came out to the last. And like I said, these are candles that I really enjoyed. At the end, I'll tell you what my top 1 or 2 are, in my opinion. And there are some in here that I would put lower on the list, but they were favorites. They were favorites, and most of them are candles that I did repurchase. So there's that. And I tend to not repurchase candles, especially from Bath & Body Works, in the same season. I might repurchase them at a semi-annual or something like that because it reminds me and I just want to buy another one. But to repurchase them in the season, it's pretty impressive. So we're going to talk all about those. And then at the end, I will give a few notes on how I think the year went, just some concluding thoughts. I'll tell you what I think the weakest elements of the year were for Bath & Body Works, and I'll tell you what I thought some of the other strengths of the company were this year, even if it doesn't necessarily relate directly to candles. Okay, so without further preamble, let's talk about, oh no, did I not get it? I know I've got one somewhere. I know I've got one somewhere. I knew I had this candle sitting somewhere and I just forgot to pick it up and bring it here. But I have one lone backup here. I was so jealous when Kent found one in semi-annual, 75% off to boot. Oh, I wanted to reach into the camera and snatch that candle away from him. This was one of the first candles of the year, this year, 2024, Tropidelic. And I loved this candle. I really did. Oh, it's so nice. It's so nice. Man, that is good. So I did burn one. This is my backup. And I'm really hoping that it comes back out this year when they do their big tropical push. We've seen a lot of the usual tropical ones hit the floor already with the Tiki Beach and whatever else, all those different ones. Hibiscus Waterfall. We need to see Tropidelic again. Hey, maybe put it in a different package. Although this package was so stunning. Oh, it is so classy and cool with the black and then all the lilies. I'm a lily person. I love the tropical lilies so much. I think I shared when I originally reviewed this candle way back in January of last year that if I ever got married, I would want tropical lilies. I think they're so fantastic when they're orange and fuchsia and then dewy. Oh, it's so pretty. Anyway, Tropidelic was their big push in January. It was their big new tropical candle. So the year before that, it was Cocoa Paradise, which was good. I think it was a little overhyped personally. There's a lot of people that just think it was the best thing since sliced bread. I personally didn't think so. I liked the body care a good deal, but I didn't even bother trying to get it in a candle form. I actually kind of thought that candle was like a half-speed coconut candle, but it was good. It was good, and it was very good commercially. So this was the new candle, tropical candle for this year, Tropidelic. And at first, everybody was super underwhelmed by it. I mean, they were like, oh, is this what they're giving us? This is absurd. Because it's a very subtle tropical floral. And when it was burned, it was even more subtle. And I think everybody was just like, what is this, right? But I noticed that after about a month, 2 months, whatever else, people, not only was Tropidelic selling out in all the stores, but people were starting to come in and ask for it. And then when it went semi-annual sale, it was gone. I remember being at a store in Richmond for semi-annual and was it semi-annual? Yeah, semi-annual for July, right? June, July. I was in a store in Richmond and they had a stack of Tropidelic and honestly, when I was there, 4 women were vroom. And I got one of them and then another woman came up and was like, did they get the last Tropidelic? And I ended up giving it to her. I was like, just take it. I've got one at home. It's fine, But yeah, by the June or July mark, I think everybody's tune had changed. And they were starting to think differently and better of Tropidelic. So I think it was one of those kind of initially underwhelming subtle fragrances that kind of got under people's skin. And once they kind of got used to the fact that it was a little bit of an underperformer, then they were totally on board and they were ready to appreciate it for what it is. It's a gorgeous dewy green. I mean, this is the dewy and the green that I was kind of expecting from this rainforest jungle. This is a rainforest jungle kind of fragrance, but it is floral forward. So the green jungle elements are kind of a background, which I think is beautiful, by the way. I'm not a huge floral person, but when you give me a good floral, I want to smell the greenery around it. I want to smell the filler green, you know? I just think it cuts some of the uber sweetness of a floral and gives this amazing, authentic experience. This is a white floral. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know exactly what tropical florals are in here, but I would say it's probably tuberose for sure, jasmine, maybe some other things too, but I think definitely a tuberose jasmine. And I think what I thought was a banana leaf kind of note too. And it's the banana leaf note that really just makes this special, I think, and gives it kind of a fruity finish to it, like a kiwi banana finish without it being a true kiwi banana. Oh, it's so beautiful. It takes me to a place, it takes me to a space, and I just want to be there forever. Oh gosh, I love this candle. I really, really do. And I don't even care how much it underperforms. So I'm going to say that that was one of my favorite candles of the year. And there it was, January 2024. Let's cross that off the list. Second favorite candle of the year, well on its heels, I think actually came out at about the same time, was Vanilla Coconut Surf. And I'm going to pop that up on the screen right now because I didn't get a backup of it. I love the packaging on this. Oh my gosh, look at the packaging here. I just love the subtlety. I love the kind of art deco-ness about it. I loved this little collection. It also had Palo Santo, I think, in it. It was a great little like duo, and it was my colors, my style kind of preferences. Vanilla Coconut Surf was apparently a new candle, and at first it seemed uber gourmandy. Like it had a real caramel overtone to it, like a caramel coconut vanilla. And I was like, no, I don't do gourmands. And Kent, initially, when he hauled it, thought that it was a gourmand coconut too. But then as he burned it, he thought it was more than just a gourmand. And I agree. And when I bought it and when I smelled it a few other times, it was like, no, actually, this is just a great beach conceptual. This is not necessarily a gourmand. While it may in the top notes be kind of vanilla, caramel, coconutty, down below there was a driftwood musk situation, you know, with like a little bit of sandalwood, a little bit of you know what. And it just made the entire thing a much more rich, complex, multi-dimensional beach conceptual. And what's more, it performed fantastically. So, I mean, I think it was one of those ones you could put in the open concept and at least get a 7 out of it, if not more than that. So, fantastic candle. By the time that I got to it and burned it, I couldn't get another one after that point. So, and unfortunately, you know, you have these high hopes that semi-annual, you'll see. And neither the semi-annual in the summer or in the fall resulted in any more Vanilla Coconut Surfs. Once again, Bath & Body Works, I would love to see a Vanilla Coconut Surf on the floor in the next 2 weeks. That would be fantastic. Usually Bath & Body Works does a big tropical push, and they have pushed out a lot of tropical candles here at the end of December, a lot of the usual suspects. But we haven't seen Tropidelic and we haven't seen Vanilla Coconut Surf, and I do think those were the best 2 tropical candles last year. I want to see those every year. So Vanilla Coconut Surf was another of my favorites. One of my favorite new candles for 2024. All right, then I had, we had this limited edition here of numbers. Guys, do you remember this candle? Number 42. Now there was a 42 and I think there was a 33? Was it 33 or 39? I don't know. I think it was 33. Candle 33. Candle 33 was that weird, coffee lemon candle. Oh, no. That was a no for me. Here's the thing, folks. I take my coffee very seriously. and that candle did not take coffee seriously. It just did not. Coffee should be dark, deep, roasty. It should be able to stand on its own. And I personally do not love overly acidic coffee that like sets your teeth on edge and is like, kind of like a buzzsaw to the mouth. I don't like that. And guess what? That's what lemon is going to do for your coffee. Some coffee beans are already acidic and they already give you that feel. And then you're going to put lemon in it? No. And it was like one of those like limoncello lemons. I mean, it was not subtle. It was not botanical. It was just not. There really wasn't much that was authentic about that candle at all. And the coffee note in it was very like, I'm an instant coffee from Folgers. Like it was a no. And there are some people who really liked it, so I apologize if you're one of them, but it was an absolute no for me. This 42 got a little bit less buzz, and I think it was the better candle, and actually one of my favorite candles of the year. This one was sweet cream, fresh cinnamon, and vintage leather. This was one of those odd candles where it was like kind of late springish, and they brought this out and everybody's like, it's a fall candle. Why are you giving this to us right now? Nobody really wanted to buy it. And it was unfortunate because if this candle had come out in the fall, in an early fall wave, I think people would have been all over it. It's a fantastic, like kind of masculine leather candle, but unlike Eddie's leather jacket and the return of Colin, it actually has more to it than just leather. It's not a novelty candle. This one has an enormous amount of beautiful cream, probably a tonka bean. It's got the musk, it's got some cinnamon, it's got some brightness. It's just a much more well-rounded candle. It's really fantastic and it performed decently. It did burn filthy AF. It's one of the filthiest candles I've burned all year. This one and, oh my gosh, it was that cafe latte candle. Both of those candles have to take the crown. If we awarded a prize here at the end of the year for filthiest Bath & Body Works candle, those two would be shoo-ins. And I can't even remember which one was worse, to be honest. They were both terrible. Sidebar, and I've said this, I do think Bath & Body Works has been tweaking their wax formula this year. I think there's a great deal more soy in these candles than there have been before. They've always had a soy blend, or they've had a soy blend for recent memory. But in a soy blend, they don't have to tell you how much of it is soy. They just don't, right? It can be anything, you know? I think it has to be, I don't know what the regulations now are. I know it has to be a specific percentage to be able to call it a soy candle. I don't think that there might be a specific percentage it has to be if you want to call it a soy blend. But if there is a benchmark that you have to meet, it's very low. I want to say that you could probably have a candle that's about 20 or 30% soy and you could call it a soy blend when it should really be called a paraffin blend, you know. But obviously they want to highlight the fact that, you know, the 20 or 30% is soy. I think that Bath & Body Works formula up to this point has been much heavier paraffin than soy. I think this year the formula has been tweaked to increase the amount of soy. I don't even know that it's a majority, but I do think that it's significantly more than it has been in the past, which means that there were actually far less candles this year that were filthy, that were dirty. There were also far fewer candles that had puny wicks and that choked up. And a lot of that has to do with the wicks. So they may have done some wick work as well. And the strength and throw on most of the candles this year was not great. And I'll mention this again in the disappointing aspects of Bath & Body Works this year. But across the board, Bath & Body Works' candles usually are in the 6 to 8 kind of category. On a scale from 1 to 10, they're in the 6 to 8 range. There are some candles that are higher than 8. There are some candles that are lower than 6. But up to this year, I would say that was generally the spectrum for them. And it is a little bit stronger than many other candle companies at this point. This year, that strength and throw continuum shifted down for Bath & Body Works. I would say that their range this year was 5 to 7. 7 might be generous. It might be 5 to 6.5. Most of their candles kind of were in the 5 to 6.5 range, which was low for Bath and Body Works. But if I'm correct, and they've got more soy in these candles, it would explain that to a great, it would explain it at least to some extent. All right, so anyway, candle 42. Great candle. Great candle. Just kind of unseasonal for when it was. The coffee lemon candle was very poorly executed, but at least it made sense for the season that it was coming out, which was late spring, early summer, right? This one just made no sense, and I don't know that it sold particularly well for that reason. Oh, that's when they made us play the name game too. Like we had to like vote on a name for these two candles. And then in the end, it was like the 33 one was very long and unwieldy. It was like espresso and twisted lemon peel and who knows what else. And then this one was like vintage memories or something like that, which was ridiculous. Most of us who had any sense voted for vintage vinyl because we thought that that was a really cool and I think kind of great candle name for this, because it does kind of like have a very masculine, like library kind of feel to it. That has some brighter, more whimsical elements. Vintage vinyl felt great, and I think they like made it vintage memories. I said at the time, I think they're setting this up so that like first wave of the fall, they'll bring it back. They'll bring back both of them with the names that we voted on. And it would have been fantastic if they had done that, because then we would have had this candle at a very seasonal moment with its like new stupid name, and then like we would have had a chance to enjoy it again. And it just didn't happen. So it just kind of seems like a weird gimmicky thing that they made us do. I don't know. Maybe we'll see it this year. Maybe they'll bring it back out. And once again, it'll be unseasonal. For poor candle number 42. Bath and Body Works, can you please bring this candle out at a more seasonal moment when people actually want to burn a leather fragrance? That would be fantastic. It was one of my favorite candles, despite how dirty it was when it burned. All right, then we had the best collection of the year, in my opinion. And that was the African American collection for African American history, Black American Month. That was fantastic. Man, this collection was far and away the best collection in the entire year, with candles that were above average. There were 4 candles in the collection. I've got 2 of them here with me, Yumi in the Sea and Gwen's Note, which I think both of these were the standouts in the collection. Anna's Garden was good, but it smelled better on cold than it did burned. On cold, a little bit more authentic botanical, and it had a beautiful black pepper pop. But then once it was burned, it kind of became a little bit muddled and ended up not being quite as brilliant as it was on cold. But Gwen's Note and Yumi in the Sea, fantastic. The 4th candle was this like chocolate, My Sweet Sisters. It was the chocolate hazelnut one that was polarizing. The gourmand folks were kind of half in, half out with it. They didn't love that candle. It was the first candle to sell out because it was the only gourmand of the collection. But from what I could tell, it wasn't an entirely successful candle. Man, Yumi in the Sea and Gwen's Note are fantastic. And to be perfectly honest, of all of the candles this year, they come the closest to being worthy of a Best New Candle nominee. This Yumi in the Sea is a gorgeous, gorgeous aqua conceptual. I mean, it's fantastic. And there's some restraint in it. Like they didn't just pour in like Bath and Body Works, like shower fragrance, you know? They're just watering it down, making it a, flanker for some sort of shower gel, right? Blue Orchid, fresh eucalyptus, salt water. Yes, it's briny, it's sweet, it's floral, it's aqua. It's just, and it's not too sweet. It's so fantastic. It really is like smelling the sea breeze. Oh, what a great candle, and performed very decently as well. So Yumi in the Sea right there, one of my favorites, if not my favorite this year, and almost really worthy of Best New Candle status all on its own. Gwen's Note was a huge surprise. I think Gwen's Note experienced some major manufacturing problems, because this was a situation where the lid, I think, corrupted the top layer of wax, so that the top layer of wax was just, for at least the first pour of this candle, was very off-putting. It was disgusting. It was like crayon and like burnt rubber. It was so bad. And like there were stacks of them. Nobody bought this candle. And I felt terrible because the candle, I went ahead and bought it, you know, just because I liked the notes on it, which were sandalwood, sage, and lavender. I was like, well, all those things are right up my alley. So even though this smells disgusting, I'm gonna go ahead and take it home. And then once I started burning it, like that top layer dissipated fairly quickly, and the rest of the candle was beyond brilliant. So then I started recommending it, and I did notice that I think in a subsequent pour of this candle, they fixed the corruption issue so that later pours of Gwen's Note weren't so off-putting in the store. Oh man, this candle is good. Once again, almost worthy of Best New Candle status all on its own. Really beautiful. Just gorgeous lavender note. And the sage is just making it a little bit more earthy, a little bit more biting, rather than the sage overwhelming the lavender. I think it's mostly a lavender sandalwood with a sage finish, if you will. And the whole thing is creamy, and it just works. When you burn this, especially in a back bedroom, it is fantastic. It's kind of like the coconut mahogany candle that, in my opinion, that coconut mahogany candle is very off-putting on cold. It's kind of weird. When you burn coconut mahogany, it transforms. It just comes to life. It smells fantastic. It works once it's burned. This was one of those candles too that like smelled even better burned than it did on cold. And that's fantastic because there's a lot of candles that smell great on cold, less so once burned. This was exactly the opposite. And now that I've got one that's not corrupted, it doesn't even smell bad on cold, but I'll tell you what, it smells even better burned. The performance on You, Me, and the Sea was a bit better than Gwen's Note, but Gwen's Note wasn't bad. And it was especially, I mean, I think it got up to a 6.5 at least in the back bedroom, if not a 7. And it was made for a back bedroom. This fragrance is stunning, stunning. I said at the time, I think it needs to be differently marketed. You, Me, and the Sea is probably fine. Like they could keep that in their collection, but without having this block quote and knowing that it was Gwen Gonzalez who developed the fragrance, and Gwen's Note is actually a fragrance note, which is sandalwood. I just think it's an odd name for a candle that nobody's gonna get. So I would love if they repackaged and remarketed this fragrance as something else. And believe me, this fragrance is fantastic for January, February, and March. Friends, I'll be burning one of these this year, very soon, here in this January, February period. And if I was Bath & Body Works and it was okay with Gwen, I would repackage and remarket this and put it on the floor in the next 2 weeks. Yes, yes, yes. This is in the genre of their brilliant lavender vanilla candle, which is also a really excellent candle, especially for January, February. This one is actually a little bit more interesting, a little bit more complex, just a little bit more across the board. So yes, again, probably worthy of Best New Candle status all on its own. But when you take that whole collection, this one, Gwen's Note, You, Me, and the Sea, Anna's Garden, and even like the somewhat lackluster Sweet Sisters, that entire collection was probably far and away the strongest candle collection that Bath & Body Works had all year. And I don't think was sold. I don't think that it got the attention that it deserved. Unfortunately, the marketing and the packaging was so boring on it, and they just kind of slapped these kinds of just regular generic lids on it. It just didn't get attention. It did not get the attention that it deserved. And this was not only far and away the best collection from like the minority ethnic History Month collections, designer collections, developer collections, far and away the best of those this year. But I think it was far and away the best collection, full stop, of candles that they had all year. So really, really, really excellent. And I had kind of forgot about it myself. And then when I started reviewing the notes, I'm like, what a bad year Bath & Body Works has had, you know? And then when I started reviewing it, I'm like, wait, there were some here that were really fantastic. So it makes me very happy to hopefully remind you all of that. Okay, so let's move forward. Bridgerton collection. This was the first Bridgerton collection, and I already mentioned Danbury Shortbread, but this was my favorite of the collection right here, Queen Charlotte's Tea. And to be perfectly honest, I don't like tea fragrances. I don't like my house smelling like tea. I don't mind my house smelling like coffee, but not tea. Tea is just weird for me. I don't like it, and I'm not even that much of a tea drinker, but despite all that, I really enjoyed this candle. I thought it was a good fragrance. So this was a new one. It's supposed to be rich bergamot, bold citrus, and black tea leaves. So I think they were actually going for to be honest, I think an Earl Grey, but more than an Earl Grey, I think they were going for Lady Grey tea. If you're not familiar with Lady Grey tea, you're missing out. So everybody knows Earl Grey tea, which is bergamot and black tea, essentially. Lady Grey tea has a great deal more citrus in it. And you would think I would not like that because I don't like my teeth being set on edge, but man, this tea, Freudian slip, this tea is beautiful. There's a softness to it that I think is really fantastic and almost like a floral dimension to the tea. And I think that's probably what they were going for here with Queen Charlotte's Tea. It actually doesn't really smell like either Earl Grey or Lady Grey tea. This actually smells much more like Constant Comment from Bigelow. There is a strong clove note in here. Maybe even a cardamom note, to be perfectly honest. But it's like one of those bolder, more Indian spice kind of levels with an element of citrus that really smells more like orange rather than lemon. So again, you're kind of going a little bit more like orange pomander. And that Bigelow tea, that Constant Comment, is essentially like a citrus orange with heavy like mulling spices, essentially. So I would say this is much more similar to Constant Comment. But there is an aspect here that is herbal and lemon also. And it's almost like a lemon verbena note, to be perfectly honest. It's kind of more of a grassy herbal lemon on the side that is almost taking it in a more body care direction. I mean, it doesn't go full-fledged body care, but it definitely fills it out and makes it perhaps not 100% a gourmand. Makes it almost a tea conceptual. It's really unexpected, and it was fairly successful, and it performed well. So I liked Queen Charlotte's Tea. It's another great one for spring. It's a great one for right now, January, February, and March. Queen Charlotte's Tea, if you've got one, this might be a great moment to kind of bring it out. It's still kind of got those more robust holiday-ish kind of spices in it, but with the lemon verbena, and that aspect of it is kind of orienting it into more of a spring, new year direction. Really fantastic. I thought it was great. Again, it worked for the concept. It worked for the collection. It was something different. I really liked it a lot. So I'm going to put that one in there as well. Very surprising for me, especially. This candle right here came out in the first fall wave, sugared lemon and spice. And I paid it no mind at first because I think it's not great on cold. Blah. Yuck. So essentially this is like limoncello, which I can't stand anyway. It's just not my thing. Like there's just something so synthetic and candied and Bath & Body Worksified about limoncello. It's just not, lemon is a hard note to get right, period. But then on top of it, like Bath & Body Works has their own little versions of it that are just not, it's a no for me. It's an absolute no. So it's basically like a heavy limoncello And then you can kind of sense these vague spices underneath that just because they're being overwhelmed by the limoncello made the whole thing smell like dusty spices underneath, like crazy effervescent Bath & Body Works limoncello. It was an absolute no for me. Under no circumstances was I bringing this candle home. And then Greg from All About Candles did bring it home and said, this is a fantastic candle. This is a fantastic candle. And I trust Greg. Greg and I like share a lot of like fragrance preferences, etc. Like we agree on candles. So I was like, maybe I'm missing something, right? So I picked this one up. Thank God I did. This is a great candle. Again, almost worthy of a Best New Candle nominee all on its own. If you watched my review, I said that in the end, I thought that this was a sister scent to Cozy Sunday Night, actually. But because it had the brightness, the citrusy brightness to it, and it sat a little bit higher up in the range without the graham cracker notes, and without the wood notes, as many wood notes in it, that it actually was like an earlier fall season offering so that you could do sugared lemon spice and then go to Cozy Sunday Night once you got deep into the fall. But what I didn't notice when I was smelling it on cold was a very strong ginger note. And now that I'm like thinking about it, I can kind of smell it. But like I said, that limoncello note on cold just seems to overwhelm the whole candle. Once it's burned, the candle becomes balanced. This is another one of those candles where it was just better burned than it was on cold. Those are rough candles because it's the cold smell in the store that makes you either want to buy it or not buy it, right? And so honestly, this will keep me up at night sometimes, thinking about the candles that I just didn't buy because I didn't think that they smelled great, but are actually diamonds. And I will never experience them because I just did not buy them. They didn't smell good in the store. I mean, in a perfect world, that's what we candle reviewers are there for, to like draw your attention to some things that otherwise you might not have picked up. But like things fall through the cracks, even if you're a reviewer, you know? If nobody reviews it or whatever else, like it just, it drives me crazy. Anyway, this was one of those candles that I was not impressed by on cold, but once it was burned, it was fantastic. Everything lined up, everything balanced. So the lemon became less synthetic, less like limoncello effervescent candied, and became like just a really nice lemon citrus note that like accompanied and kind of showcased the ginger spice concoction, which became kind of much more of the main event, is this ginger forward spice like blend that was a little bit more mid-range, a little bit brighter, and just lit with the lemon. And it worked so beautifully. And the strength was so powerful on this candle. I mean, it was a good 7.5 to 8 kind of candle. No matter where you put it in your house, it was giving you a little bit of fall spice, but it still had that bright lemon note that you would kind of experience from the summer and going into September when like everything is very bright. Like it hasn't gotten dark in the evening yet. It was a fantastic candle. I went ahead and repurchased another one, and I would repurchase another if I found that it's semi-annual. But this one actually, once people realized and they started like hearing from others what a great candle it is, it sold out. It sold out. This, by the way, was the collection that had Salted Amber Vetiver coming back as well. There was another candle in this collection that was new. I want to say it was like a apple and pomegranate maybe, or an apple and cranberry. I can't remember. But actually that candle ended up being lackluster. It was fine, but sugared lemon and spice was more than fine. So there's that. And then last but not least, I have here one of my favorites. And I know this is not a Best New Candle, probably in anyone's book, but I loved it. It was Calming Skies Lavender and Peppermint that they gave us as an aromatherapy here late, kind of going into the holiday season. The candle version has a bit too much peppermint, overwhelms the lavender a little bit, but you can still smell the lavender. It's just that when it's burning and when you're smelling it on cold, you're kind of experiencing it as like a 70% peppermint and a 30% lavender. The body care is almost reversed. So the body care, you really are getting more like 60% lavender or 70% lavender, 30 or 40 peppermint. It's a bit more balanced in the body care the right way. But I liked the peppermint. This is not a medicinal peppermint. This is like a candy cane vanilla peppermint. And the lavender is really unexpected and beautiful. And I just thought it was fantastic. Unfortunately, it doesn't perform very well. So there's that. Probably in the back bedroom, it came in at like a 5.5. I wanted it to be a whole lot stronger than that. And I wanted a little bit more lavender, but I still found it to be one of my most enjoyable candles this year. And I bought another one. I have two other candles here, and I don't know whether to call them honorable mentions or not, because I don't actually know if they're actually new fragrances. But for my money, they seem like they were new fragrances. These were both in the same collection, and they both were summer candles. Friends, these were two of the most enjoyable candles this year for me, Surf Shop and Raspberry Rosé. And this was one of the ones that I bought in the semi-annual sale. I found a store that had two Surf Shops for 75% off, $6, and I went ahead and got it. Eat that! Greg from All About Candles, $6! $6! Surf Shop was his favorite too. Surf Shop has been out for a very long time, many years, and has generally made its appearance every year since then, or at least every other year. But for my money, the fragrance this year seems tweaked. And they didn't bother tweaking the notes on the back. So the notes are the same as the ones that they've been for years. Oceanside birch, sparkling waves, and summer spruce. You've got birch, you've got spruce, and you've got aquatic. And to be perfectly honest, it kind of looks like it'll probably be a men's cologne, an aquatic leaning men's cologne. And that's kind of what it was. Very similar to this Sea Sails and Surf, or whatever else that other one was, which is a little bit more masculine leaning. And actually that Sea Sails and Surf, which I liked, I enjoyed a great deal. It came out in this summer as well. These notes are much more descriptive of that Sea Sails and Surf one. The Oceanside birch, sparkling wave, and summer spruce, that's what that other one smelled like. This one is very fruit forward this year. It's not masculine at all. And there's very little personal fragrance in it at all. There is a vague aquatic brininess, but mainly it's a very like melon forward fragrance. I think it's probably a honeydew melon. Maybe even with some stone fruit, like a peach or something like that. Very fruity, but then it's got that amazing briny aquatic as well. It's gorgeous. And I mean, the notes don't even mention fruit. Wow. And this candle was so loud. Again, it was like a 7.5 in the open concept. So fantastic. Was not quite as like austere, stripped down, or authentic ocean as You, Me, and the Sea was. This is much more of a carefree backyard barbecue, more mainline commercial kind of aquatic with like kind of those very familiar backyard barbecue fruitinesses. But it's still fantastic. And I loved burning this one this summer. I'm so glad I have other ones to rely on. The packaging here ended up being really nice too. The light kind of shone through this watery portion. Even though it looks like it's made for about a 5-year-old, the packaging on this, it really worked. One of my most enjoyable burns this year. And I think it deserves a mention because I do think the fragrance here has been reformulated. And whatever this fragrance is, they need to keep it. This is a winner. I would love though if they did like change the notes on the back to reflect the reformulation. I actually like this one even better right here. Raspberry Rosé. wow, this was fantastic. And everybody said that it was a repackage of, what's the other one that it's supposed to be? You guys know what it is. I'm going to flash it up on the screen right now. This candle, whatever this is. This candle is a candle that I hate. I have literally never been tempted to bring this candle home. Never. This candle I brought home, and I loved it so much that I bought another one because it was so good. Unlike this candle, whatever this is, this has a very it's got an amber note in it. It's a very perfumey, heavy kind of version. Whereas this one doesn't have the perfume aspect at all. And it substitutes for it like this amazing raspberry pop that is more authentic and tart and sour and fruity and jammy than whatever this candle is. Blah, blah. I'm sorry, I just don't like that candle, and I do not accept that it's a repackage of it. I just don't. I smelled them. There was a very rare moment this year where they were both on the floor at the same time, and I was able to smell them in conjunction. They are not the same candle, and I even had several managers smell them with me. They are not the same candle. This one is far superior and had amazing strength and throw, and I'm not a huge powerhouse backyard barbecue fruit kind of candle person, but man, this felt good in July. This was a great candle, and I would be happy to burn one of these every summer alongside Surf Shop. They were my two standbys this summer, and summer is my favorite fragrance month season. It really is. I have so many Hall of Fame summer candles. These two really made the cut, at least this one. This one made the cut. I do have to say that Surf Shop, I enjoy it a little bit more on cold than I do burned. On burned, I like it a little bit less. So there's that. If I had to choose between them, I would choose Raspberry Rosé. Raspberry Rosé was my winner this year. Winner. I want to burn it every summer. And yeah, it's a Hall of Fame. It's a summer Hall of Fame for me. So there you go. Those two, and I don't know what to do with them because everybody swore up and down that Raspberry Rosé was a repackage. And Surf Shop, of course, has been out for years, so should not be a new fragrance. But I think both of them are new fragrances. I just think that they are. So if they are, they definitely deserve a place in this best new, or not best new, I'm not calling it best new, my favorite new candles 2024. All right, very briefly, let's talk about highs and lows for Bath & Body Works this year as a company. As I said before, I do think that they've tweaked their wax formula. The really positive thing about that is that there are so many fewer candles now that were filthy, that dudded out at the halfway point, that had puny wicks, etc., etc., etc. Bath & Body Works has been dragged, especially by some of the candle reviewers and ambassadors from other companies who prefer a heavy soy formula. Bath & Body Works had just kind of become the whipping boy and was starting to get kind of the moniker, the dirty candle company. And I'm sure Bath & Body Works didn't love that. They don't want to be known as the dirty candle company. So I think this year they did make some positive changes along those lines, with the exception of number 42 and Cafe Latte, which were the two candles I burned that were filthy. So filthy. Oh man. With the exception of those two, I really didn't experience that many candles this year that, like I said, dudded out halfway or were really sooty. I mean, most of these candles were either not sooty at all or just moderately so, softly so, really not bad. So I think they have changed. I think they have a heavier soy percentage in these. And if sooting really makes a big difference for you, that's got to be really positive. I'm sure they got far less complaints from the consumer about the filthiness, the dirtiness, and the dudding out. So success on that level. I think it was at the expense of Strength and Throw. So that's the problem. I mean, soy just does not throw the same way that paraffin does. So their celebrated like continuum or sweet spot for Strength and Throw really took a hit this year. I would say the overwhelming majority of their candles came in between 5 and 6 on a scale from 1 to 10. Many were far below that. A few were above that, more than a few. So there were outliers on both sides, but I would say the vast majority of them kind of landed in the 5 to 6 realm, which for Bath & Body Works is underperforming. It's really underperforming. There's a lot of other candle companies. I'm looking at you, Kringle. I'm looking at you, Homeworks. I'm looking at you, Yankee Candle. Most of the other candle companies are frankly in that 5 to 6 category. A couple of them are actually even lower than 5 to 6. And they have been for years. Okay? I think it's part of the reason why there's an eagerness to drag Bath & Body Works for the sooting, etc. Because, I mean, it's a pro and it's a con, right? It's a trade-off. The company that has the best Strength and Throw is also going to have more sooting. It's as simple as that. And so the so-called cleaner companies were all like, dirty, dirty, dirty. But the reality of it was Bath & Body Works was also much stronger than all of them. So I think as consumers, we just have to kind of pick our poison, you know? For me personally, I want a loud fragrance. And soy not only does not give a very loud fragrance, it also just doesn't capture the fragrance very well. So it's not as good at giving nuances. It's almost like the fragrance itself gets washed out and also does not produce especially bassier notes particularly well. So it's kind of like one of those equalizers that kind of will represent a lot of high notes fairly well. The treble notes will get through and kind of an impressionistic version of your fragrance, but it's not clear, it's not powerful, and your bass notes are not going to come through with power. They're not going to sound the right way. There are very few soy fragrances out there that are bassy, and there's a reason for that. It's the way that soy basically can't capture fragrance. For me, fragrance is key. Fragrance trumps all. And so for me, I will trade off. I will take some sooting and some filthiness if you can give me a really loud candle that gives me fragrance, nuance, depth, richness, etc. That's my personal poison that I pick. And I completely receive and acknowledge that that may not be the poison that you pick. You know what I mean? Right now, the tastes seem to be running toward the clean version. They want a very clean burning candle with less soot, less smut, less filthiness, etc. But then you've got to be okay with like a fragrance that comes in at half speed and is sounding at half and not giving you a bass note, etc., etc. I'm just not willing to do that. So for me, it was kind of a negative for Bath & Body Works to have tweaked their wax formula because there were just not enough candles for me this year that performed as well as they could and should have. And in another year, I think would have. There are a lot of these of my favorite candles here that I felt as though I needed to give a caveat that it doesn't perform. And I don't want to be doing that. And I think that's indicative of a shifting wax formula for Bath & Body Works. It'll be interesting to see where they go next year. I kind of experienced it as a negative, but it was a negative that had positives too, because I do think that the quality of their burns did improve. And objectively, I received that. But it was at the expense of Strength and Throw and some amount of like, I think, fragrance clarity. So there was that. I take that as you will, whether or not you experience that as a positive or as a negative. There was that. Disappointing for me was the collaborations across the board this year. So the major collaborations were Stranger Things, Bridgerton, and then Emily in Paris. Am I missing one? I may be missing another collaboration of some kind. But there were 2 waves of Bridgerton and there were 2 waves of Stranger Things. So technically that was 4 collections with Emily in Paris. And I may be missing something else. I don't really think those went very well. They were, especially that first Bridgerton one. I mean, it was like we were all going to like Disney World or something. Like it was just so heavily marketed and promoted. And all of these people who were Bridgerton fans were going to come in and buy all this stuff. But as we've all experienced now for semi-annual sale, there's a lot of Bridgerton stuff that we're seeing in semi-annual sale that did not sell from that first wave. First. I kind of wonder too if the second wave of Bridgerton was supposed to be bigger, but given how badly the first one went, they pared it down. And that could be the same thing with Stranger Things as well. Although I think the Stranger Things was a bit more successful because it was a bit more of a modest collaboration. The Bridgerton one like took over the entire store. The Stranger Things first wave collection was big, but it didn't take over the whole store. It just didn't. And then the subsequent versions of both of them were even smaller than the original ones. Emily in Paris was bad. It just was bad. I think the fragrances were bad, and they're not my wheelhouse. So I want to be kind of, I don't know, I want to reserve some judgment and pull some punches here because they're just not for me. They're not for me. I'm not a girly girl. Like that was just not going to be my collection anyway. But I think objectively they were pretty bad. Pretty phoned in fragrances. Should have been a slam dunk for Bath & Body Works. Given the genre of Emily in Paris, just should have been a slam dunk. And instead, it was just kind of like their weakest fragrances. And it was so cheap. It was just such a cheap collaboration. And I get the sense that not a whole lot of Emily in Paris people came in to buy it. So there have been a lot of leftovers from all of the different collaborations. Probably Stranger Things went the best because it was more modest. And it was very cleverly timed right for Halloween. So that helped as well. I would love for them to stop doing these big flashy Netflix collaborations. They put an upcharge on everything because of Netflix, because they've got the marketing. And it often doesn't make any sense except for from a marketing standpoint. The fragrances and the offerings they're giving us are not significantly better, and sometimes they're just kind of subpar than the other fragrances that they give us. It's hard for the consumer who knows Bath & Body Works well to justify spending that kind of upcharge. So I think they were really counting on a lot of people coming into Bath & Body Works and buying them who were just fans of those given shows, who didn't know about Bath & Body Works, and they were going to get scalped. But I don't know that that happened to the extent that Bath & Body Works like kind of anticipated that happening. So I personally think the collabs have been at most okay. I think that they probably weren't successful, but I'm not in the back office. I don't see the numbers and I don't see how it performed. So I could be wrong about that, but my impression is that those collabs did not do as well as they should have done. And I think they just kind of took away space that could have been given to other more interesting collections that Bath & Body Works could just have done for their usual consumer. And sometimes it wasn't seasonal. Along those lines, a couple of the like ethnic, History Month collections were very subpar. The Asian South Pacific one, oh man, that was so bad. Looks like this. These were the candles. If you remember, that collection the packaging was not good. The fragrances were not good. It was really, really phoned in. The Black History Month one looked phoned in too, but the fragrances were extremely above average. So I give Gwen Gonzalez all the credit for that. Man, she had a great year. Thank God for Gwen Gonzalez. Those fragrances were top notch, even though Bath & Body Works was just kind of like, fuck this, just slap any old lid on it. It's got an ombre, set it in the corner, that kind of thing. I mean, they weren't really promoted well. They weren't given good signage. They didn't have good packages. Like, honestly, Bath and Body Works set them up to fail, and they almost did if it hadn't been for the fact that these fragrances are well above average. And once the word started getting out and people started buying them, they started being sold. Yeah, I just don't know what they're doing with this. This collection here looks great. It looked great, but then it came out at a very unseasonal time. And again, got lost in the shuffle. It's been a real hit or miss with the whole like perfumer collections and the History Month collections, the ethnic collections. I don't necessarily think they should stop doing it, but I really think that they need to be a bit more thoughtful about what they're doing here and make each one of them a slam dunk, especially if it's like an ethnic or minority thing. If you put in a half-assed collection, it looks triply bad. You know what I mean? Looks like you don't care. And so I think more attention needs to be paid to that. If you can't do a slam dunk collection, just don't do it. Don't do it. We didn't need this Hispanic one because it didn't get any uptake. And so it was just a waste. Save it for a moment where you've got nothing else going on. Let it have its moment, right? So I think the collabs in general and the designer collections need some retooling. Also very disappointing this year for Bath & Body Works was at the very beginning of the year, and I was a huge fan, they had a huge botanical and herbal push of a lot of different new candles that were botanical and herbal and in kind of a very greenhouse-like kind of vibe. Wild Rose and Suede, Blue Verbena and Lime. Have you seen the stacks of those at Semi-Annual? Greenhouse Firm, Bergamot Birch, Lavender Vetiver. There were a lot of botanical candles out in the first half of the year in 2024, and almost none of them really landed correctly. And I'm a huge botanical and herbal fan, so it hurt me probably more than anyone else because I wanted those candles to be winners, and they just simply were not. So I would say that that was a very disappointing part because it was a huge aspect of the new collections, really the first half of the year, and I don't think any of them landed particularly well. So that was unfortunate because it was something new. It wasn't just the same old like 27 tropical candles. They did do tropical candles, 2 of which were new and fantastic, Tropidelic and Vanilla Coconut Surf. But in lieu of at least 20 of those tropical candles, they did this more interesting botanical herbal thing, which I thought was great. It was unexpected. It was a little bit more innovative, but unfortunately those candles just didn't land and didn't perform. So that was very unfortunate. They were some of the worst performers too in terms of strength and throw. Last but not least, let's talk about some of the good things this year. They're not necessarily even candle related. They had a big laundry push this year, and I think it went fairly well. They've got a very good range of detergents and fragrance scent boosters on the floor now at every single Bath & Body Works across the nation. It was a slow rollout for the year. They've got a very good range of them, so it's not just like 4 or 5. Really, in every store, you're gonna see, up to 20 different fragrances for almost everyone under the sun. And I think that that's fantastic. I'm a huge fan, especially of the fragrance boosters. I've been using them. I won't go back to anything else. I think that that was a very strong moment for Bath & Body Works. And slowly people are starting to uptake those laundry contributions. If you haven't tried them, definitely try them. Try them out. If you don't like it, just return it back to the store. They'll be delighted for you to try it. So I think laundry was a good push for them this year. It made sense. It made sense in the store. It was something original. It wasn't just another body care or like a face thing. They keep trying to make the skincare thing work. And I just don't know that anybody trusts Bath & Body Works for skincare. So God bless. I wouldn't trust them for it. There's too much out there in terms of skincare, body care, that kind of thing. That's a huge juggernaut and that's what you go to Ulta for. It's what you go to Sephora for. There are major major players in the skincare realm. When you're putting something on your face like that, like, yeah, Bath and Body Works is just a fragrance company, and I'm concerned about them still trying to make this work. I don't think this is for them. I don't think that really good skincare is for Bath and they do other things well. They do other things well. This is not one of them. Fragrance for laundry, an entirely different matter. I think that is a very, very good foray, and I hope that they continue doing well in that. There were also a few aromatherapy options this year that I thought were quite good and a little bit underhyped. So very lately, the Cedarwood Sauna fragrance and the Mineral Stone Spa fragrance, those are quite good, and they're still on the floor, I think. Water Lily Springs, and then there was another aquatic one too from earlier in the year. Those two were above average as well. I've talked about aromatherapy in other videos. I think it's one of those things that used to be a really huge part of the company and has really dwindled and kind of been run into the ground. I like to see some of these limited offerings of some aromatherapy that reminds me of the way they used to do aromatherapy in the past before it got really bad and cheap and generic. So I think that at least those 3 or 4 fragrances were quite good in the aromatherapy line, and I want to see what they come up with this year. Last but not least, I think Halloween was a really big moment for them this year. Unlike last year where they kind of like threw 2 or 3 fragrances out on a table and called it a day, this year they went big with Halloween, huge. Yes, the packaging and the marketing and the artistic direction was not to everyone's taste. Yes, the fragrances were not necessarily original, but they really did Halloween in a big way. Their displays looked fantastic. I mean, it was like all court pressure for Halloween. They did fantastic. They knocked it out of the park. The only thing that I'd like to see them improve on going forward is that if you do like a very cutesy, like glittery Halloween contribution, even for your main Halloween push, make sure that you do a few darker, spookier things later as it gets closer to Halloween, just so that you do give both groups of people a little something. As we all know, Halloween has become huge in the United States of America, but there is a little bit of like a divided demographic there in terms of Halloween. There's the folks who like the really cutesy stuff, and then there's the folks who like the really dark stuff. And they obviously, it's a culture clash between the two of them. Bath and Body Works, for a whole host of reasons, does the cutesy better than the really dark. I don't think the really dark will ever be Bath and Body Works' vibe for a whole host of reasons, but they are still able to do a fairly dark or intriguing kind of fragrance. And I think they do need to make sure that they're giving something to all people at the Halloween mark. And I do think going forward that they need to not half-ass Halloween. Halloween is not my particular holiday, but I think given the tastes and given the interests of Americans at this point, they cannot afford to not do a huge thing at Halloween. So I don't want this to just be an anomaly this year. I think they should really, really make Halloween a big push every year going forward. So, and I'm glad to see that they at least started it out this year doing the right thing. Friends, that was it. I know this is a huge ass video, so I crave your indulgence, your forgiveness. Although I know a lot of you really like a long video, this certainly was. But it's Bath and Body Works, and it's a year in review. So there's a lot of things to talk about. Were some of these favorite candles of mine your favorite candles? Do you think any of them really should be objectively best new candles for 2024? How do you think Bath and Body Works did from your estimation? Definitely tell me in the comments below. Onward and upward, my friends. Let's see what they do this year. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one.